win the popular vote in a true sense. I think there was tremendous cheating in California. There was tremendous cheating in New York and other places.
All right, a false claim by the president, who lost the 2016 popular vote by 3 million with no widespread voter fraud.
And of course, that was based, if you go back several years, on he talked to a golfer who said he saw people illegally voting in Florida and in California. And, you know, this is a president of conspiracy theories, voter fraud, crowd sizes, soup cans, and he does it because he creates, again, this alternative universe.
Yeah.
And we've actually had Ross Douthat write about this a couple of weeks ago. Ann Applebaum has written about it, where you create an alternative universe and you create these straw men and then you knock them down. You talk about, you know, teenage ninja mutant turtles all going on airplanes. And no, I don't have the information, but there were bad people dressed in all black on these. I'll get the information to you. I can't tell you now. I'll tell you later. We'll tell you in a few weeks. This is what he does. And if you're wondering why he creates these conspiracy theories, it actually happens. This is what autocrats do. Mm-hmm. It's what they're doing in, right now, Hungary. It's what they're doing in Poland. It's what they do in Russia. They create, and in Poland right now, they tried Muslims, as I explained before, but it ended up there weren't enough Muslims there. It didn't really work. Of course, that hasn't stopped Orban in Hungary talking about a Muslim invasion when there are hardly any Muslims there, right? So then Poland turns to an attack on homosexuality, saying that it is the threat to the country and it's going to destroy Poland. Well, that's what Donald Trump's doing now. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have a list of accomplishments that he can campaign on, so he's whipping up as many conspiracy theories as possible, even refusing to condemn QAnon conspiracy theorists, even refusing to push back on the theory that there's this international cabal of, what is it, pedophiles and cannibals, and Donald Trump is the savior to stop these cannibals and pedophiles from taking over. And Donald Trump won't push back on that conspiracy theory. You ask why? The reason why, it's the same thing with all autocrats. They create fear. They create the straw men. And then, as Ross Douthat said, when they take care of it, then they've done something as great as FDR or JFK or Ronald Reagan, something they accomplished. Of course, the biggest problem here is we know Donald Trump. We know his character. We've seen it over the past 4 years. The question is, why don't Republican senators speak out against this?
This is the part that's upsetting.
They just won't speak, other than Mitt Romney. Other than Mitt Romney, Republican senators won't speak out against these vile conspiracy theories.
I'm not sure how they can live with themselves. Still with Joe and me, we have Jonathan Lemire, Elise Jordan, and Shauna Thomas still with us. And joining the conversation, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University, politics editor at The Grio, and an MSNBC political contributor, Jason Johnson, is with us, and political reporter for The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst Robert Costa. He's the moderator of Washington Week on PBS. Great to have you all.
So, Mike, before we jump into our top stories, I want to talk to you. You know Massachusetts politics as well as anybody, better than most. Tell us what happened last night with Ed Markey and Joe Kennedy.
Well, Joe, I think it's pretty simple. You pull it down to the basics. You've run for office before. You've gone door to door before. You know, you go to the door and people say, "Why are you running?" Joe, unfortunately, never really addressed that question. Why are you running, Joe? And why are you running now against Ed Markey? And what did Ed Markey do wrong? And Joe got caught up in...
Did we lose Mike? We lost his audio.
All right, it's sort of contractual obligation that Mike Barnicle has that every time you do a hit with Mike, the first hit has to not work. And so Mike we can check that box off. Let's try it again, Mike. Instead of going to somebody else, we'll try you again.
Let's go.
And you made a great point. When you knock on the door and somebody says, "Why are you running?" you better be able to answer that in about 5 seconds. And Joe Kennedy, again, somebody that you've told me, Bill Delahunt, a lot of people in Massachusetts told me when he first came on the scene, great kid. You're going to love this guy. He's got what it takes. And he is a great guy. But he could never really answer that question, could he?
No, and question. He did not answer that question sufficiently.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's a second. Mike, sometimes that is what my grandmother would call gracious plenty. Mike gave us more than enough there. Bob Costa, let me go to you. Obviously, as Jonathan Lemire said last hour, this is the first Kennedy that lost in the state of Massachusetts. I think John said they're 26-1 there. But Ed Markey, man, he's a guy that people in Massachusetts liked. I always saw him as a progressive when I worked with him there. Didn't really, I just don't think there was a good theory of the case on why Massachusetts voters should send Ed home.
And this contest wasn't necessarily a battle between personalities. Senator Markey has been in Congress for decades. He's a low-key man. He's someone who's always been on the sidelines of American politics, working on things that are very frequently on the left wing of the party that don't get much attention. Yet suddenly he found himself in 2020 facing an unusual primary challenge from a member of the Kennedy family, but he also found himself in the moment with the Democratic Party. He saw his own ideas like the Green New Deal coming to the fore of the Democratic Party in a new way, and he used that enthusiasm from Representative Ocasio-Cortez and others to cast himself as the candidate of the left, the candidate of the younger generation that's frustrated, and Representative Kennedy ended up becoming more of the candidate of the older, more centrist liberal Democrat in Massachusetts, and it just wasn't enough. But I've covered Representative Kennedy for a few years now. I do not believe this is the last we've seen of him. He is someone who wants to have a career in public service. He will surely come back in some way.
And now we have the audio feed from Mike Barnicle, who's state of the art. Let's play it.
Okay,
in
Mike.
Boston, Massachusetts, I tell you. Boston, Massachusetts. So, Lemire, you somehow managed to speak to us via Skype or whatever you're speaking. Give us your rundown on the race and what happens next for Joe Kennedy.
Mike, we're thinking of you. Please come back. Yeah, I think Bob is exactly right. I think that this is not the end of Joe Kennedy, and we've been discussing. There never seemed to be a real purpose to this race. So some in the party, as we talked last hour, thought that he was rushing into this, that he wasn't ready. He surveyed the field, saw that it would be tough down the road with Congressman Ayanna Pressley, be a formidable challenger for a Senate seat in a future cycle. So he jumped in here, and I think there was a thought that the Senator Mackey, might step aside, bow out to the Kennedy name, but he chose not to. And as we've been saying, and Bob just underscored there nicely too, he really sort of fashioned himself as the left-wing candidate here, the more liberal candidate, and the endorsement of AOC and the full-throated backing of the Green New Deal can't be overstated here. And we've seen this happening a lot in the Democratic Party right now, where they're certainly in certain states and certain districts, those sort of real progressive voices are carrying a lot of weight. And it should be noted, House Speaker Pelosi backed Congressman Kennedy in this race, so she took a loss on this one. AOC came out ahead, and I think that it is now, as you say, Joe. It was also something of a puzzle to some Democrats why this race happened at all, when the party really is focused solely on defeating Donald Trump and, of course, capturing the Senate, if possible, this November. The Senate seat, certainly in Massachusetts, was never up for grabs. That was going to remain in the Democratic Party.
All right. President Trump visited Kenosha, Wisconsin yesterday and given another opportunity to promote healing and unity after the unrest that followed the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The president instead chose to promote his campaign message of law and order. He did not meet with Jacob Blake's family, but did speak alongside the Kenosha police chief and county sheriff. He dodged questions about systemic racism and made clear, even before he arrived in Wisconsin, the purpose of his visit.
I'm speaking really today. I'm there for law enforcement and for the National Guard because they've done a great job in Kenosha. They put out the flame immediately. As soon as they came in, boom, the flame was gone. Now maybe it'll start up again, in which case they'll put it out very powerfully.
Okay.
Can you speak at all? You've spoken a lot about the anarchy that you're referring to. What about racial divisions? Would you like to bridge some of those gaps? And do you think that anything that you're saying is helping with that?
I think it's helping because I'm about law and order.
Do you believe systemic racism is a problem in this country?
Well, you know, you just keep getting back to the opposite subject. We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen in Portland and here and other places. It's tremendous violence. You always get to the other side. Well, what do you think about this or that? The fact is that we've seen tremendous violence, and we will put it out very, very quickly if given the chance. And that's what this is all about. And you have people that choke. They're under tremendous, I said it yesterday, I said it last night. They're under tremendous pressure. And they may be there for 15 years and have a spotless record, and all of a sudden they're faced with a decision. They have a quarter of a second to make a decision. And if they make a wrong decision, one way or the other, they're either dead or they're in big trouble. And people have to understand that. They choke sometimes.
Oh, my God. Yeah. It's just so embarrassing.
The thing is, I mean, I understand, and we talked about it a good bit. If a police officer is running through a house and somebody comes out of a dark corner and they think they're holding a gun and they're charging at them, they have to make a decision in a split second. And it's hard for any of us to put ourselves in that position. In this instance, you had a man walking slowly and deliberately back to his car, and he was shot in the back
behind him
7 times. That's far different than missing a 3-foot putt. I've missed a 3-foot putt. I've missed a lot of 3-foot putts. To compare that, though, to shooting a man in the back 7 times, claiming he had a knife, 2 completely different things. But let's move beyond that, Jason Johnson, and let's just talk the pure politics of this. Donald Trump went to Wisconsin so he could say, I support police officers. Well, Joe Biden the day before said, I support police officers. Every time a cop goes out and puts that badge on, I know that he or she is putting their life on the line for us. And most cops are good cops. Joe Biden also condemned the sort of violence that the president tried to use as his backdrop of those poor people who lost their business, had their business destroyed. Well, Joe Biden condemned that yesterday. So you have both of the candidates aligned with each other on supporting police officers and condemning violence, but then you go to the other side of the ledger. And one will not talk about systemic racism and will not even visit a man who got shot in the back 7 times and is paralyzed, won't even call his parents. I mean, it seems to me, I don't see the political upside for Donald Trump because he's not running against somebody who is condemning police officers. He's not running against somebody who is justifying violence and looting.
Yeah, Joe, and I think we even have to be careful about the language that the White House is using. For him to say he was going to sort of survey the damage, what's the greatest damage? The greatest damage is Jacob Blake. The greatest damage is 2 people killed by Rittenhouse. Those are the people who can't be replaced. They can't be rebuilt. James Blake isn't going to, Jacob Blake is not going to get his legs back with insurance. These businesses can be rebuilt. But the lives that were taken by Rittenhouse and the man who will no longer be able to walk and play with his kids again, those things can't be fixed. So we can't even let the president pretend. We cannot let him use the language of going there to survey things that he's actually not surveying. And here's the other thing that I think is really important from a political standpoint. I told you, I think the Republicans stopped running a campaign 2 months ago. When they said we're not even going to come up with another stimulus for COVID, they're just interested in trying to rig the election through the post office. But you also have to remember that people throughout the state of Wisconsin is also one of the states that's really suffering economically. It's suffering because of COVID. And the president has this crazy idea that he can turn a conflict into a small suburb into something that's going to change the votes to everybody in the state. And that's not going to happen because people's daily lives are not affected by Kenosha. It is affected by COVID and 30 million people being out of work.
Yes.
Joe Biden's campaign unveiled a new television ad last night that includes portions of his speech this week condemning the violence in some of the protests around the nation.
I want to make it absolutely clear. Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Fires are burning, and we have a president who fans the flames. He can't stop the violence because for years he's fomented it. But his failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is. Violence will not bring change. It'll only bring destruction. It's wrong in every way. If I were president, my language would be less divisive. I'd be looking to lower the temperature in this country, not raise it. Donald Trump is determined to instill fear in America because Donald Trump adds fuel to every fire. This is not who we are. I believe we'll be guided by the words of Pope John Paul II, words drawn from the scriptures. Be not afraid. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
I'll tell you what, I'm a conservative. Some people would even condemn me as a law and order conservative. I got to say, though, Shauna, I look at Donald Trump and his approach to this issue, and I look at Joe Biden and his approach to this issue. It's not even a close call. Joe Biden is condemning violence on both sides. Donald Trump is not. In fact, he's even offering support through tweets and through some of the things he says for his 17-year-old boy who got an AR-15, murdered 2 people, killed 2 people, and charged with murder by authorities. Somebody from out of state saying he was protecting property that wasn't even his own. I'm sorry, this, even for the conservative law and order guy in me, this looks pretty clear cut. Joe Biden has the much stronger political argument, at least in my eyes. What do you think about that ad, and what do you think about how this issue is setting up?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that ad does speak to you. As you called yourself a law and order conservative, I'm not sure that is the moniker you want to use, but that it speaks to you because I think that ad is designed.
Well, listen, if law and order, let me just say, if law and order it means that you're against looting and means that you're against rioting, that, as we've seen from anarchists for years. I have no problem with people keeping streets safe. And I said some people might condemn me as a, quote, law and order conservative. I've spoken out about what's been going on in Portland for a very long time, and I will continue to speak out against it because I don't want, like John Lewis doesn't want, like Reverend Al doesn't want, like a lot of people don't want, the peaceful marching of the 25 million people that came out in the Black Lives Matter marches. I don't want that overshadowed.
No, I understand that. I do think that the fact that the commercial speaks to you says exactly what the Joe Biden campaign is trying to do. They are trying to speak to you. They are trying to speak to people that they think are already dissatisfied with President Trump, but also may not be considering voting. He's trying to figure out how to walk the line of doing the two things that we've been talking about, saying condemning violence, condemning rioting, while also acknowledging that there is a larger problem in this country. So I think the commercial does that, but the commercial also takes a turn and does try to define President Trump. So instead of just trying to, say, I am not President Trump, Joe Biden calls him weak. And we know that that is something that really riles up President Trump. He doesn't want to be seen as weak. He wants to be seen as strong. He wants to be seen as like the strong president of the United States. So I think what they're trying to do there is it seems like the tactic that they need to do right now, but it also shows that this is kind of what the Biden campaign is worried about, that law and order message that the president is putting out there is something that they really, really do have to combat. And they're doing it by putting a pretty substantial buy behind this ad and running it in a lot of places. I think I read this is the largest buy they've done so far. So it points to where they think they're starting to possibly have a problem with respect to the message of their campaign.
And this is, Elise, this is my point. I don't think Joe Biden has a problem here. I think if you look at that ad, if you look at what Joe Biden has said, and if you look at what Donald Trump has done, they're so ham-fisted. You look what they did on June the 1st, and people in the White House, after the president attacked peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park, they were high-fiving each other. They thought it was a brilliant idea to have him go over and hold a Bible upside down. That hurt him with the numbers. I know other people don't think this. I actually think this is going to hurt him as well. I think Joe Biden is positioned perfectly as you have Donald Trump, again, refusing to even condemn 17-year-old boys from out of state carrying AR-15s around to protect property that wasn't even his own and shooting and killing 2 people.
Joe, it's almost as if the Trump campaign is trying to take something that is Joe Biden's general election strength, that he wasn't exactly at the forefront of leading criminal justice reform, that he was for the 1994 crime bill that led to the gross mass incarceration of so many African Americans in this country. And now they're allowing him to showcase that, quote, law and order background. And I think it's smart that Joe Biden's campaign is not letting this rest, that they are not letting Donald Trump's attacks on Joe Biden as being someone that's for anarchy stand, that they're spending big to get these ads out. I thought the speech was masterful. I thought it said what needed to be said, made very clear unequivocally that Joe Biden does not stand for lawlessness. He doesn't stand for rioting. He doesn't stand for looting, and differentiating between those acts which should be prosecuted versus protesting for racial injustice.
Yeah, I think the ads are a masterstroke. And Jonathan Lemire, I don't think we can emphasize this enough. If we really want to explain to Americans what's happening when the president goes to Kenosha, I would tell everybody again, if they look the lower right-hand side of their television screen and see that 185,000 Americans have died from a pandemic that the president said early on was just being hyped up by the media, and that the president's still lying about. Jonathan Lemire, their goal, is it not, is to distract people from the coronavirus and the president's terrible performance handling the coronavirus. That is their goal between now and Election Day, that Americans will forget what a bad job he's done on a pandemic that will probably have killed 200,000 people, 200,000 Americans, when he said it was just one person from China is going away, but will probably kill 200,000 Americans or more by the time people vote.
Joe, you simply could not be more right. I wrote earlier this week as sort of a preview of now the stretch run.
I did not even pay you to say that, Jonathan Lemire. I did not even pay you to say that, but I will. The check's coming.
I don't think I've ever been that sort of forceful in that, and I won't do it again anytime soon. But in this case, you are right. And I think that sure. Don't get used to it. The campaign, his advisors have said, and we wrote in recent days, they want to talk about anything else. They feel that any day in which the coronavirus pandemic and obviously the president's handling of the pandemic is not the dominant storyline is a good day for them, or at least a day, one of the advisors put to me, a day that they can win, a day they can try to win, to talk about something else. And yes, certainly in these last few days, last couple of weeks even, it's been about this idea, about the law and order, quote, the idea of the chaos in these streets. And certainly there have been some disturbing images, what we've seen in Portland. The president did walk yesterday among burned out storefronts in Kenosha. Although it should be noted, as Elise pointed out earlier, he did not speak to the current owner of that store. That was a previous owner, because the current owner didn't want to appear with him because he thought that the president was adding to the tension in the town.
Wow.
But this is their plan. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at Joe Biden. They're going to throw whatever they can to try to change the narrative, sow confusion, whether it's about mail-in ballots or law and order. They just want to talk about something else. Because to this point, this race is a referendum on the president's handling of the pandemic. It has not been a choice election. It's been a referendum. Yeah. And we see these polls are stubborn and consistent. Americans don't think he's doing a good job.
So we're going to come back, but first, ground control to Major Tom. Have we gotten the signal back? I don't know if he's there or not. Oh, he's there.
Thank God.
We'll talk to Major Tom, Mike Barnicle, when we return.